Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a horror film, 32 MALASANA Street. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The film begins in the year 1972 in Madrid, where two young boys are fighting over a marble. The marble slips off and falls down the stairs as they fight, stopping at the dark corner. The youngest boy flips the light switch, but it fails to turn on. The oldest boy stops his brother and reminds him that their mother does not want them to get close to the corner, an old lady's apartment. However, his brother refuses as the marble rolls inside the flat. He walks inside, calling the old lady, but he receives no answer. His older brother stands at the door as he watches him get the marble. The boy follows where the marble has rolled, leading to a room where he finds the old woman. The old woman sits on her rocking chair as her back faces the door. The boy respectfully requests the old woman to give him his marble, but she remains unresponsive. So he slowly walks towards her and reaches for the marble when her hand suddenly falls off the chair. She also knocks off the telephone table on her side, causing fear to the boys, who immediately leave the flat. The scene then fast forwards to 4 years later, where a new family stops in front of the same apartment building. The realtor welcomes them and accompanies the parents to their flat. They stop at the 3rd floor, exactly on the old woman's apartment. The realtor lets them inside to check the flat covered with dust, as no one has lived there for years. The family has lived in the village but decided to move to the city for new opportunities. They sold everything they had to buy the apartment. Although it is not a house, it is spacious enough to accommodate the couple, their 3 children, and the grandpa. After giving them the keys, the realtors leave the family to fix and arrange their stuff. Amparo, the daughter, gets the old woman's bedroom, and the older brother gets a room with a window in front of another apartment, while the youngest brother, called Baby, has to share a room with grandpa. The mother watches Amparo remove all the old woman's clothes from the closet. As she takes out the hangers, Amparo stops at a beautiful green dress and checks herself in the mirror with it. The mother then instructs Amparo to bathe her youngest brother while she cooks their dinner. Amparo immediately puts all the dresses outside in the garbage, but she keeps the green dress. She returns to the flat, bathes Baby, and then dries him. When Amparo prepares to clothe him, Baby pleads with his sister to play with him because playing with the dying grandpa is dull. So Amparo puts the clothes on the bed and starts to play with him the game I Spy. They only do one turn because Amparo needs him to get ready for dinner, so she takes the clothes for Baby when it suddenly disappears on the bed. She looks sideways and notices that Grandpa has left the room. She excuses herself and goes to the bathroom, where she finds Grandpa on the toilet, holding Baby's clothes. As she approaches Grandpa, the bedroom door suddenly closes on its own. Amparo tries to open the door, but it is locked, so she repeatedly calls Baby to open it, but receives no answer. Amparo then looks underneath the door gap and finds Baby hugging his knees on the floor. Then suddenly, an old woman's foot appears out of nowhere. Amparo immediately shouts to her parents, who quickly run to the room. She frantically informs them that someone is with Baby, and she cannot open the door. The father forcefully opens the door, only to find the son sitting by the window. Baby remains seated at the edge, ignoring the commotion and panic he has caused. The father silently approaches Baby before driving him from the edge. The father immediately scolds Amparo because Baby could have killed himself. Amparo tries to explain and insists that she saw someone, but neither of her parents listens to her as they are too worried for Baby. Later that night, Amparo excuses herself as she is still overwhelmed by the sudden changes in their lives. She goes to her bed and reads her boyfriend's letter for her. On the other hand, Baby stares at Grandpa, who needs a machine to sleep as he is too sick. The mother comforts Baby as there is nothing to be scared about. She kisses him goodnight and turns off the lamp before leaving. However, Baby cannot sleep, so he repeatedly turns off and on the light until the mother shows up and stops him because he will increase the electric bill that way. The following day, the father gets to his new work at the truck factory. At that same time, the mother's coworker gives her advice as she works as a new sales lady at a clothing store. Meanwhile, Amparo notices a younger picture of the old woman on the wall. She dismisses it and wakes up her brothers for breakfast. The brother gets up and sees a note outside his window attached to the ropes. The message is from the woman, named Clara, living in the apartment in front of his room. The brother replies to the note and waits for Clara to appear. But minutes have passed and she does not. As the brother turns away from the window, he hears the rope moving. So he returns to the window and reads the note, saying that Clara has been expecting him. Meanwhile, while Amparo redesigns the green dress, Baby scares her with his trumpo. She immediately scolds Baby for playing the trumpo and takes it away from him. Baby apologizes, so Amparo takes him to the kitchen to eat breakfast. She returns to the living room and finds the telephone number of Iberia Airlines. She writes it down on a used paper when she suddenly notices another telephone number and a name Susanna written below it. Then she hears Baby repeatedly saying yes, so she returns to the kitchen to see who he is talking to. However, she finds Baby alone, so she asks him, and Baby replies that Amparo is talking to her. Amparo denies, but Baby insists as he draws. Amparo then hears a door closing nearby, so she orders Baby to stay in the kitchen while she searches for Grandpa. As Amparo leaves him, Baby starts talking to someone who cannot be seen, and then he sees a marble rolling on the floor. Baby takes it when he suddenly hears the TV noise in the living room. He goes inside and finds his favorite children's show playing. So he sits on the floor and watches it. However, the display changes into an old woman puppet who starts talking to Baby like he is her grandchild. She talks to him in her lovely voice, complimenting Baby before asking if he wants to play. Baby nods as a reply, so the old woman plays the I Spy game with him. Baby guesses the correct answer, his trumpo, but he sadly shares that Amparo does not let him play. The old woman replies that he is alone with her, and then suddenly tells him that she will call a friend who knows a lot of games and wants to meet him. At that same time, Amparo finds Grandpa outside, so she asks him to come home with her. Grandpa replies that she will take him, and then points to their apartment out of the blue. Baby immediately turns off the TV, only to see an old woman sitting on the rocking chair behind him. He turns around and finds it empty, but the old woman leaves the chair and crawls on the floor when he checks the TV reflection. He turns around again and sees the seat vacant, so he slowly rechecks the TV, only to be grabbed by someone with a big hand and long nails. Shortly after, Amparo and Grandpa return to the flat. Amparo immediately goes to the kitchen. However, she finds the room empty, so she repeatedly calls Baby while searching the apartment. However, she cannot find him, so she quickly informs her family. Her parents come home later, and the police arrive shortly after. They explain that Amparo followed Grandpa outside and left Baby inside, but the boy was gone when they returned. The officers search and check the whole building, but they fail to get any information. However, the family cannot stay in the apartment as they are distressed now. So the three of them go to find Baby, while Amparo stays with Grandpa. While Amparo anxiously waits inside, she hears a telephone ringing. Although confused as they still have no cable line, Amparo follows the ringing, leading to the living room. She answers the phone and hears Baby's voice, warning her not to make too much noise, because someone will hear them. Amparo asks if it is a woman or man, but Baby replies that he has been caught. The call drops, and Amparo hears Baby's scream nearby. She immediately follows Baby's scream and discovers that he is inside the apartment beside theirs. Amparo frantically calls for help as the door is locked, and a neighbor comes out from the disturbance. The family appears seconds later, so Amparo informs them about her discovery. However, the neighbor explains that no one has lived in that apartment for years. The family dismisses it, and the father forcefully opens the door, revealing a dark and abandoned apartment. They repeatedly call Baby, but receive no answer, so they walk inside and search the flat. Amparo detaches from the family and gets inside a room, where she hears Baby's laugh. She finds Baby's silhouette behind the curtains, so she slowly walks towards him while calling his name. The lights suddenly flicker, and the silhouette has transformed into a bigger person. Simultaneously, the family finds footprints on the floor, ending with a grandfather clock. Although trembling from fear, Amparo slowly removes the curtain, revealing the old woman's ghost. The ghost suddenly grabs her hand, causing a scream from Amparo. The family immediately runs to the room and finds Amparo on the floor, frantic and crying. The father checks the room, but finds nothing. So the couple pick up Amparo as she is still hyperventilating. The following day, the mother does not want to go to work, knowing that Baby could be in danger. However, the father convinces her because they just started working and they need money to pay the mortgage. Outside, Amparo calls Susana's phone number, introduces herself, and asks about the apartment. However, Susana rudely drops the call without giving Amparo any answer. Meanwhile, the mother notices a disabled customer staring at her. The customer cannot speak and is in a wheelchair, so she uses the whistle attached to her chair. A fashionable old woman from the counter walks in their direction and apologizes for her daughter's behavior. The old woman explains that her daughter must have seen something in her and then brings out a card prayer. It is a prayer against evil, and she advises the mother to read it to her children because it will help them. The mother is confused by the strange encounter until her coworker steps in and volunteers to attend to the old woman, named Mrs. Psychic. Meanwhile, the brother receives another note from Clara saying that Baby is okay. The brother replies with a question on how Clara knows it, and she responds that they should meet in the basement. The brother goes downstairs to the basement but fails to find Clara. Instead, he sees the old woman's ghost in the mirror before she grabs his face. The brother frees himself and quickly runs away from the basement. Concurrently, Amparo returns to the flat carrying groceries. She suddenly feels nauseated. She drops the bags and promptly runs to the bathroom to puke. Amparo looks at her belly as she realizes that she is pregnant. Suddenly, she hears music playing, so she goes to the living room and turns off the disc player. She then hears whistling from the kitchen, so she looks who it is through the glass door and finds the old woman's ghost. Although scared, Amparo opens the door and sees Grandpa cooking. Grandpa faces her, forgetting what he is cooking, causing a small fire. Amparo immediately turns off the stove and cleans the mess when she suddenly hears Baby's voice. She turns around and discovers that Grandpa is talking, but in Baby's voice, he tells Amparo to help him and answer the phone. Sure enough, the telephone rings, so Amparo leaves the kitchen and answers it. She hears the grandfather clock dinging, and Baby screams. She immediately runs to the apartment next door and breaks the glass on the grandfather's clock. Amparo quickly removes Baby and cries as she hugs him. After calling her parents and an expert, the family gathers around as the doctor checks up Baby. He informs them that in Baby's state, it is normal for him not to speak for a while because he is still in shock. As the doctor talks with the parents, Baby puts his hand on Amparo's belly like he knows she is pregnant. Later that night, the mother suggests to her husband they should move out as weird things keep happening in her flat. However, the father argues that they cannot afford to move again, as they spend all their money buying the place. Hours later, while everyone is asleep, the brother's window suddenly opens, waking him up. He checks to see what it is, and he finds dozens of notes attached to the rope, all of which have the word mine. Simultaneously, the mother wakes up and finds Baby awake and staring at a picture frame on the floor. She gets up and takes the frame with a note saying, "I spy." Suddenly, a woman comes out from the dark and whispers into the mother, frightening her. Meanwhile, Amparo is mixing a rat poison into her water, attempting to kill her unborn child. As she prepares to drink it, the glass suddenly breaks, the power goes out, and the door locks on its own. At that same time, the father hears noises from Amparo's room, so he checks it out only to see the old woman's ghost. His flashlight flickers, and the ghost suddenly transfers from the room's corner to in front of him. Amparo tries to open the door and repeatedly screams as the ghost is inside the kitchen with her. The brother comes running, breaks the glass door, and drags Amparo out of the room just in time before the ghost grabs her. After that, the family immediately leaves the flat and spends the night at a motel. The following day, the couple go to the insurance company to get money. However, the staff advises them not to leave, as it takes decades to pay a mortgage. After that, they part ways to go to work. However, the father gets fired as he has left the work without explanation. Although devastated by the continuous bad news happening, the mother remembers Mrs. Psychic. So she goes to her house, who seems unsurprised to her at their doorstep. Mrs. Psychic takes the mother to her daughter's room, where she shares that her psychic daughter has a third eye. Mrs. Psychic adds that they can leave and sell the flat, but the ghost will continue to haunt them, as she has already attached herself to the family. Desperate to end it, the mother asks for their help, and Mrs. Psychic agrees. The family lets Mrs. Psychic and her daughter inside the apartment, where the daughter faces the picture of the old woman and breathes on her whistle. Simultaneously, Amparo goes to Susanna's address and questions her about the recent tenants in the flat. Susanna gives a photo album to Amparo, revealing more pictures of the old woman. Susanna shares that the person in the pictures is her brother, who was repeatedly punished by their father for being gay. Their father locked him in the clock, but the punishments are not enough to stop him from obsessing to be a woman and a mother. He even stole Susanna's green dress and pretended to be pregnant. One day, their father caught him in the basement with a neighbor, and he almost beat him up to death. It turns out Susanna's brother preferred to be called Clara. Susanna hated her brother because of his sexuality and blamed him for every unfortunate thing in their family. Therefore, they locked him out in that apartment as he was too obsessed to be a mother. This explains why Clara took Baby and then returned him after discovering that Amparo was pregnant. Apparently, Clara wants to take Amparo's child. When their parents died, Susanna left the building as she was too ashamed, but Clara always called her every night until the day Clara died. Susanna warns Amparo to be careful because Clara will do anything to be a mother even after death. On the other side, Clara possesses the psychic daughter and creates chaos in the apartment. She pins the family to the furniture to get Baby, but Mrs. Psychic bravely faces her and prays while she hides Baby behind her. However, Clara uses her powers to weaken Mrs. Psychic by letting her puke black liquid. The psychic daughter's body levitates as she approaches Baby, but before she can take him, the pregnant Amparo arrives. Clara frees Baby and commands Amparo to give her unborn child. Amparo tries to make Clara realize that she should not let vengeance and obsession ruin her chance to live as a good spirit. However, Clara refuses, as her obsession to be a mother overpowers her. So Amparo takes a broken glass and pierces it through her belly. Clara screams as Amparo tries to kill the unborn child. She unconsciously frees the family, but before she can attack Amparo, the father runs to her and drags her as he jumps to the window. Their loved ones cry and scream as they hear the father and the psychic girl's bodies drop on the ground. However, unknown to them, Mrs. Psychic's daughter is still alive as Clara still possesses her. A few months later, the family leaves the apartment as the father's life insurance pays their mortgage. Ampero's belly has grown, but they will never forget their experience in that flat. Inside the apartment, the rocking chair suddenly starts to move and is followed by a telephone ringing, meaning that Clara will wait for a new family to fulfill her dream to be a mother. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.